These two men next to me should need very little introduction. Gus is sprinted over here from morning breakfast and as captain of the grill team and host of the Man Up series, which I know a lot of you saw. Great to have you with us, Gus.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
And the Blockinator, Keith, with us from the series The Block, and who's held up by many people as the guru of safety in Australia. So good to have you with us, Keith.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
Can I also make a mention of the Centre Group? On all the Centre Group sites now, they have stopped and they're watching the live stream as to what's happening here. So thanks, guys, and thanks for getting right behind it. So we'll hello to the Centre Group guys and the guys on site. If I can make a start with you, Keith, I grew up in country Victoria and my dad, really simple instructions to me, which was useful because I'm a simple guy. He said, John, your job is to get a good education, and if you can't handle it in schools, get out and get a trade and stick to your footy and cricket, because if you're half good, it'll open opportunities up for you. And that's what I tried to do. I found women and drink, and that sort of killed me sporting career for a little while. But you did very well, didn't you? You represented Victoria in cricket. You're a fast bowler of some note. You're at North Melbourne Football Club. You were doing an apprenticeship as a chippy. In my world, you were living the dream. Was that the reality?
Living the dream, but working very, very hard. I used to go to school, 15 years old, year 10, finish school, jump on a train, head out to Arden Street, which is probably 45 minutes away by train, do 3 or 4 hours of running, get in a cab, go home, and do that 4 times a week, and that was after school. So that was just footy training, and then that continued on to cricket. Did the same thing, trained 3 nights a week, used to do time trials Sunday morning, and I also did HSC and did pretty well in HSC. And as you're saying about being an apprentice, my dad wanted me to be a school teacher. He wasn't happy when I chose a trade, but my uncle actually talked me into it, because he said that school teaching, you're limited in your money, and if you get a trade, you become a businessman, and the sky's the limit. And I took that on board, and I worked very hard. And my football and cricket taught me about team environment and how important it is, and I also learnt to work hard. And the minute with footy and cricket you didn't work hard, your performance suffered. So at a very early age I was used to training my butt off, so to speak, and making the most out of my opportunities. So
in terms of your mental health, was the experience as a young chippy a positive one, and as an up-and-coming footballer, was that a positive one too, or were there downsides to that team environment and that working on sites and things like that?
50-50, I'd say. The work was relentless, monotonous, especially footy training. I used to hate it. I really did. You were tired and you had to keep on going for another 2 hours. I played under Dennis Pagan, who was a pretty ruthless footy coach. He coached North Melbourne to a couple of flags, and I enjoyed playing footy, but the rest of it I didn't really enjoy because it was simply too hard. And even with work, like when you're an apprentice, you don't do the beautiful jobs. You know, you could be on a wheelbarrow all day, or you can be jackhammering all day. Then you finish, then you start again. You know, you got to go footy training and work hard again. But I lived through it. I've reaped the rewards, and the hard work's got me where I am right now.
Thanks, Keith. And Gus, you have an illustrious sporting career. Yeah, you're a cricket aficionado, and we could spend the whole morning talking about the Indian experience, but we won't. You actually completed a New York marathon. You represented Australia in dodgeball, and I don't know if this is courageous or stupid, but you infiltrated the Barmy Army. You work with Mark Geyer and Johnsy. High-profile sports. What's been your experience around sport and the ups and downs and how that affects people's mental health?
Well, I'm certainly a sports tragic, there's no doubt. The dodgeball was in Vegas. We spent most of the time drunk or trying to get drunk or trying to work out where we were playing and what position. It was a bit of a joke, but we did represent Australia. It was a bunch of blokes who realised that there was no dodgeball association in Australia, so we just made it up ourselves and gave ourselves baggy greens and blazers, which Lowe's did for us for nothing. It was just fantastic fun. I wanted to play cricket for Australia, but was never good enough. Worked that out pretty quick start. But yeah, my passion for sport, watching sport, got me into media, and I was able to support the Aussie team around the world, India, the West Indies, and England and Australia. Now I'm with Matty Johns and MG, who of course have played at the highest level, State of Origin as well. And one thing I worked out really quickly is these blokes I'd put on a pedestal for a long time were just as fragile as all of us, you know, and they wear probably an even bigger set of armour than most, because everyone thinks, especially MG, who's 6'6" and 120 kegs of muscle, no fat, he's got no problems in the world, and of course he's going to be the strongest and the bloke who can deal with anything. But of course it's not the case at all. And in fact, he nearly, you know, found himself in all sorts of trouble, you know, many times through his career when he was looked upon as an absolute gladiator. So I've worked that out, and Matty's been through his own dramas and own problems as well, and they've both come out the other side, but not without a lot of soul searching, and also a lot of what I believe really manning up, which is showing that vulnerability and being able to understand that, you know, hey, I've got an issue and I need to deal with it, and if I don't deal with it, then I'm in real trouble.
Yeah. Thanks, Gus. Is it also true that Hugh Jackman had a bet with you that if Australia lost the Test series, you'd have to be a permanent member of the Barmy Army?
Yeah, that's right. Jacko and I went to Pymble Public together, so little school. He's done okay in his life. A little disappointing when you go back to reunions, you think you're flying, and then Jacko walks in and you realise that you haven't. Yeah, champion bloke, and to be honest with you, people say, you know, you've used Hugh Jackman to become some sort of, you know, media person, and they're absolutely right. I came up with an idea to support the Australian cricket team around the world, and do you reckon we could do like a travel program following the Australian cricket team? He goes, that's a pretty good idea. And I said, mate, do you know anyone that you could talk to? Because I imagine if you'd open a few doors. He goes, oh yeah, I'll just ring the bloke at Foxtel, Brian Walsh. I went, okay. And 2 days later, I'd left my job as a salesman at Toshiba and I was working on a TV program. That was 10 years ago. So I absolutely used him to my benefit. But I think after that, perhaps I've, you know, done okay. But initially, you got to get in somehow, and I used that friendship built over 30-odd years.
And what's the point of having mates if you can't use them?
Absolutely. And I'm milking him for all I possibly can, any opportunity I can.
So, Keith, you're in that safety space. You're recognised around Australia as being, you know, the foreman on the block and insisting on things being done well. And I guess what we see on TV in terms of the block is high pressure, timelines, all those sort of things. What do you see when you look at people under pressure, under timelines? What do you see around safety, and how do you think that sense of being under pressure affects them?
Well, the pressure definitely affects the contestants on the block. Luckily, we only do it for 3 or 4 months, because if you had to work at that rate for 12 months, you wouldn't survive. And we don't really have any special conditions for the people that really suffer with depression on the block, and it does happen. It does happen quite a lot. What we tend to do is give them time off, because that's really all we can do. I think last year, 2 girls, they were suffering the whole time, and there were times when Julie and Sasha simply couldn't cope with the building component of the block, and also the producers, you know, just nailing them. How come you're making all these mistakes, you know? And the pressure just keeps building and building and building. And you'll have one problem, then 10 minutes later another problem, another problem will arise 10 minutes later. So they are really going through depression, seriously, when they're filming the block. And all we can really do is recognise it, lay off a bit, leave them alone, and give them a bit of space.
So do you think that the sort of things you see on the block, do you think those sort of things occur on building sites around Australia?
Definitely, because I think there'll be situations that are worse, because the people on the block, they're getting paid. Now, builders, contractors, plumbers, whatever, say you've underquoted a job, you probably realise that halfway through. And sometimes you can underquote a job by 20, 30%, and that means that you're basically not going to make any money, and you're going to struggle to pay everybody, pay all your employees, etc. So what tends to happen then is the guys will work 12, 13-hour days, and just to make up the extra money, and you just have no life. And building's hard because you're not doing enjoyable work. If you're a labourer and you've got an issue, you might be on a jackhammer for 8, 10 hours a day. So all it's doing is personifying that problem, making that problem worse and worse and worse. So I think it's the people that are the bosses or the foreman, etc. They've got a duty to recognise those problems and to maybe alleviate that work of what they're doing and give them a task which is a bit nicer, so to speak. Not just let that person carry on and getting more depressed.
Thanks, Keith. So, Gus, if I can come to you, I was reading you said that when your mate Angus took his life changed for you. And you said along there that you thought we were friends, but we were just mates. Can you just elaborate a little? What changed for you, mate? What happened in that? Because he was a mentor and a friend. He married your cousin, if I remember rightly. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And Jen and Jackie, who are, put your hands up, guys, they made Man Up. They were the reasons behind it. It was such a great show, and we love each other dearly. Yeah, round of applause. Thank you. Even you saying Angus's name then, brings up a certain amount of emotion, because the great thing about Angus, who was my friend, who took his own life, was that to me he wore a cape. He was pretty much bulletproof. He was what I looked upon as someone that I wanted to be. Didn't seem to have anything in his whole setup, the way that he looked, the way he carried himself, the decision-making he made under pressure, the social occasions he'd walk in, the girls would love him, the blokes would want to talk to him, he always had a funny joke or an anecdote. He was just a tremendous bloke. So when I found out that he passed away, it took me about 8 years. In fact, until Jen said to me, we heard about your story, would you like to be a part of this show that I'm trying to put together? Because it's got to be a show coming from the heart. It can't be a show about statistics, and it can't be a show that's full of professors and people that are intellectual. It's got to be from a passionate point of view. So it took us over a year to do the show, and now I'm living that life, and I'm loving the fact that I am, because I was completely naive to so many dramas that were out there. I was up at Mackay last week, Thursday and Friday, talking to footballers, blokes who are on the edge of the NRL, not quite in the Cowboys setup yet, not quite in the Broncos setup, striving to be a state of origin player. And they've lost a couple of their mates who had an injury, and all of a sudden these young boys didn't feel they had anything else to live for, because that dream had been taken because a tackle had gone the wrong way. For me, with Angus, it just opened up a whole world, and I hadn't spoken to my cousin or his kids about it except at the funeral. All of a sudden I realised that they were doing a whole lot of stuff for Lifeline. They were doing a whole lot of stuff to try to help other friends. They were talking to their own kids about it. So this whole world had gone on without me even realising, and I didn't think I had the permission to go and ask them how it felt. And now, of course, permission is completely open. It's not a taboo subject anymore. The stigma within our family, it's gone, and that's what I'm trying to do now around suicide. I went down and saw both health ministers, the lady who did the wrong thing and she's got the flick, and then the new bloke came on. I'm talking about stigma, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure if there's that much drama around stigma. I was like, are you literally on drugs? Like, can we drug test you now? Like, the stigma and the fact that we don't want to talk about suicide is, I believe, one of the main reasons that we've got such a drama. There's lots of reasons. It is hard to actually nail it down. It's complicated, but if we do just appreciate the fact that it is what it is and talk about it a bit more openly, then we might have a better chance of fixing it.
I remember when you were filming for the Man Up series, you're on the centre group site, the Pacific Fair at the Gold Coast. And I'm glad you didn't take up a career as a labourer, because I saw you on the jackhammer and it was frightening.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't get John out of his trailer for his little bit, actually. We said, there's this bloke around from Mates in Construction. Where is he? And he had a trailer and he wanted to get makeup done. And also, wasn't that sort of show, John, but in the end you did well. Only took about 30 takes to get it right, but that's all right, mate. Thanks.
Anything to improve those looks. One of the things, though, I remember you interviewing one of our mates, Steve Toyer, who had an experience around suicide and whatever. And I remember at one stage we stopped the filming and you two embraced, and it was an embrace I hadn't experienced before. The emotion, the connection there was really powerful. What was happening when?
Well, connection is the right word, and it's a word that I keep on talking about now. If you connect with someone, literally properly connect with their eyes, it's an amazing experience. But of course, we spend most of our lives drifting through, sort of passing by on our phones, checking things, whatever. We don't actually stop very often these days, and maybe for a certain amount of reasons, because we're all busy and we're trying to do the right thing by our lives and our families. But when was the last time you actually stopped and connected with someone and actually sat in a little bit of silence every now and again to allow you to have that safe place to have a moment, which is really quite incredible. So for Steve and I, Steve reminded me so much of Angus. He actually looked like him. It was scarily how it all sort of worked out. But we'd spent only a couple of hours together, living in Banterland. You know, us Aussies love to take the mickey all the time, telling jokes and so forth. All of a sudden, he started talking about something serious. He was talking about when he took too much alcohol, too many tablets. He fortunately didn't die, but he woke up and his family and kids were by his bedside, and he knew then, and the guilt that came across him when he opened those eyes and that moment, and that deserved to be respected. So we had that moment, and actually the cameraman on the shoot was not a normal cameraman in the fact that he just wanted to get the shot and get out of there. He picked up on the whole thing, and he actually stopped rolling on a couple of moments, and we got up, because I didn't know what to say. He couldn't say anything else, so we just hugged, and perhaps we held on a little inappropriately too long at one stage, but the feeling was there that it was like, this needs to be totally respected, and I know I keep in contact with Steve, and he continually is dealing with stuff, and that's the thing. The fact that you own up to how you feel and you respect it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change, but at least you're on the right path to trying to, you know, stop what we're seeing, you know, with 8 Aussies dying every single day.
And in construction, we know we lose 3 guys a week. 3 guys a week take their life in construction every week. And I know, Keith, when the work you did with DATS, and you were part of some of the clips we shot around this, when you saw, like, you've been in construction most of your adult life, when you saw those stats, what was that news to you? What struck you?
I had no idea. I had no idea at all about the stats. The stats straight away just surprised me, and it made me want to get involved with Mates in Construction. I couldn't believe it. Like, we have, 3 people die a week of suicide. We put all this emphasis on health and safety, but obviously there's another issue there. Suicide is probably as big as health and safety. It really is. It's rearing its head. The stats tell you that. So we obviously have to put more emphasis on looking after workers that are struggling. What Mates in Construction are doing is incredible. I first witnessed it about 6 months ago. I was out in a great big site, western suburbs, and the way Mates in Construction walk in, put a leaflet down for every person to fill out. It's discreet, so your mates don't have to know if you've got an issue, and I think that's the biggest problem. Like, guys don't want to put their hand up and go, I'm suicidal, or I've got mental illness. Guys aren't going to do that. So the way Mates in Construction do it is just perfect, and I think that it's got to get bigger and bigger, because we have to fix up this problem. And
Gus, you come across the stats when you're doing the Man Up series and whatever. What struck you about it?
Well, Jen first said to me, did you know the number 1 killer for young men in Australia between 15 and 45 is suicide? And she's a lovely lady. If you spent 5 minutes with her, you'd work that out. So you know she's not lying, but I didn't believe her. I just said, how can that be? And how can I not know? And how can no one in my circle of friends know? And I'd been doing 6 years on Triple M, breakfast show, which is a very blokey sort of show. So I can't understand why that wouldn't have popped up. And then I realised that it was true. And then, of course, since then, the problem's got even worse. We lost 14 boys between Palm Beach and Manly just during the HSC last year. You know, the final 6 exams, 14 in that 3-week period. Guys that didn't feel like that exam went well and their life was over, or things weren't travelling along well under the pressure of that. So this is what we're dealing with every single day. Until you live in the world, until you actually take time out to realise it, no one would know. No one I know that if I don't tell them, they don't know. It's not spoken about in the media. I had a bit of a battle the other week when Dan Vickerman, the Wallaby, took his own life. And we write about it, and we have to be respectful, and we can't don't want to put out how he killed himself. But saying that he suicided, rather than there's no suspicious circumstances, and then give lifeline number at the end of it. We've been doing that for a long time, and the problem's got worse and worse and worse. So why don't we just say he suicided, and then we start the conversation, and we take away that little bit of, he suicided. Like, we all know it. Just talk about it. It might take away that stigma a little bit. But the stats are horrendous, and they're getting worse and worse. And I want people in power in New South Wales, for me, and for federal as well, to actually, rather than just talking BS all the time about how much money they're putting here and there, actually open up about how they feel about it and have a proper conversation. We don't even have a national campaign against suicide in this country. They say, oh, we start talking about it, then we might have more. Well, how many more do you want? Like, we're having 8 a day as it is, 3 a week in your industry. So how many more do we have to have before we actually turn around and say, let's have a national campaign talking about suicide? We did it through AIDS, through the 80s. We've done it with Sunslap. We did it with Keep Australia Clean. Those type of things we need to get. And we've got all these creative people willing to do it for nothing, and we're not doing it.
Things aren't going to get better either, are they? Like, life is tough. I know, like, just to buy a house these days is so hard. And so we have to knock it on the head because things are going to get worse. Life is just becoming more competitive as we go on. And as Gus says, if we don't stop, we're going to probably have more of a problem.
Of course. So just to finish up, like, you guys have been around a while, and you've been in the construction industry, you've been working in that mental health space and suicide space for a couple of years intensively, Gus, too. What have you seen that works? And don't say naked men's yoga, because I saw that and it really didn't entice me to do anything except turn the TV
I still
on.
blame you for that, Jen. And if you wanted to see it, babe, you just had to ask. Didn't have to go through 3 hours of filming and for me to see a whole lot of other junk in the trunk. For me, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, John, but you are an inspiration when it comes to mental health. You really are. You're a tremendous bloke. You've got the right idea. When I was up in Mackay the other week, there was a safety conference of people are talking with your card going, I'm going to get these blokes involved in my life. So you need to be involved not just in construction, but in a whole lot of other things, because you do keep it simple and it's honest and it's real. And you give people, like you said, you give people an opportunity to put their hand up in a one-on-one situation, which a lot of us still need. You have to build such a safe environment for a whole group of men to stand up and talk about their feelings. And it takes a special person sometimes to be able to build the atmosphere, to be able to have that safe thing. There's a bloke called Tom Harkin on our show who's like a teenage whisperer, I call him. He looked after me, my kids, my son Jack and all his mates at his local high school. 3 hours, all in tears, talking about things that really mattered. 2.5 hours beforehand, they're mucking around on their phones trying to work out how good's this, I don't have to go to class for the next 3 hours. So he just got them without even realising he was getting them. And it realises just under the surface, these young boys have got really important things to say and things that they're really worried about. And they're walking around with the armour and the mask on. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is get more of those Tom Harkins into as many schools as possible, trying to get the health minister and the education minister would understand that, because one bloke goes, well, it's really a health issue. But I said, but it's in a school. And he goes, well, that's an education issue. No one wants to pay for it, and it's a real drama. So that's a battle I'll continue. But simple conversations, one-on-one with connection, I think it's really simple, but I really think it works. And we're not going to eradicate it all, unfortunately, but we will stop the rot and try to just chip those figures back. How can we live in a country like Australia and have 8 people every single day killing themselves?
Thanks, Gus. Keith, anything you've seen around that you think this could be the way forward, this could be what works?
Well, I think recognition is the biggest thing. We have to recognise when someone's got an issue. It's obviously not that easy to recognise that somebody's got an issue, but it's up to the boss or the foreman, as I said before, to recognise that a worker's got an issue, because building's it's a tough game. Everyone's just trying to get the job done as quickly as possible. Money's a big issue. Everyone's just trying to make as much money as they can. Sometimes the person that suffers is the person at the bottom who's trying to make the money for the boss, but he's really struggling, and we have a duty now to recognise it. So I think that we should be training foremen, even the people that own all the companies, the contractors, in how they can recognise when someone's got an issue. I think that's maybe something we have to look at, because unless you recognise that someone's got an issue, that issue isn't going to stop.
Yeah, I must admit, for us, it's a whole of company, whole of industry, whole of government approach, because the little piecemeal bits, they work a little bit, but they don't work. It's not a movement, it's not momentum, it's just lone nuts. And as we spoke about before, the lone nuts need people to duplicate. So can you put your hands together and thank Keith and Gus for being up here. And